Why do people behave as they do? Do people have some choice in shaping their own personality? What makes people act in predictable ways? Why are they unpredictable? What causes mental disturbances? Is human behavior shaped more by heredity or by environment? These are the questions that Jess Feist opens his book Theories of Personality with. And through this video, we'll explore how some of the greatest minds in psychology, Freud, Jung, Rogers, Skinner, and many others, have tried to answer them. So let's not waste any more time with introductions, and let's get into it. And by the end of this video, you might just see yourself a little more clearly. So what exactly is personality? There's no single definition that all psychologists agree on. And that alone tells us something. Personality isn't a one-size-fits-all concept. Still, Feist offers a working definition. He describes personality as a pattern of relatively permanent traits and unique characteristics that give both consistency and individuality to a person's behavior. Traits are stable tendencies, like boldness or introversion, that stay consistent over time. Characteristics, like intelligence or temperament, are more uniquely personal. So if we're all trying to understand the same thing, why are there so many different theories? Feist explains that theories aren't just scientific, they're also personal. Every theorist brings their background, beliefs, and life experience into their work. Freud's medical training and Rogers' spiritual upbringing shaped how they saw human nature. But how do we tell which theories are actually useful? Feist gives us 6 criteria. A strong theory generates research, can be tested, organizes knowledge, guides action, is logically consistent, and keeps things as simple as possible. This helps us move beyond opinion and judge theories based on how well they explain and predict. Modern personality theory begins with Sigmund Freud. Freud believed that human behavior isn't primarily rational. It's shaped by unconscious conflicts, repressed memories, and deep drives, especially sex and aggression. At the heart of his model is the unconscious mind, filled with thoughts and desires we're not even aware of. He divided the mind into 3 systems. The id is primitive and pleasure-seeking. The superego is moral and idealistic. And the ego is the realistic mediator between them. According to Freud, the tension among these forces creates anxiety, which we manage through defense mechanisms like repression or projection. He also believed personality develops in childhood through psychosexual stages, culminating in the infamous Oedipus complex. Freud's theories are controversial and hard to test scientifically, but they changed the way we think about the mind forever. But not everyone agreed with Freud's vision of human nature. Even within his inner circle, 2 key figures would eventually break away, offering new views of personality that were more social and in some ways more optimistic. Alfred Adler rejected Freud's emphasis on unconscious sexual drives. To him, human beings weren't helpless victims of internal conflict. They were goal-driven, social, and capable of growth. His theory, called individual psychology, focused on 3 big ideas. 1. Striving for superiority. Adler believed that all people start out feeling inferior and small, especially as children. Life becomes a journey to overcome those feelings and strive for significance. This striving can be healthy, or it can turn into what Adler called a superiority complex, a mask for deep insecurity. 2. Social interest. Unlike Freud, Adler saw people as inherently social. He believed that mental health depends on social interest, a sense of connection, empathy, and contribution to others. The healthiest personalities aren't just successful, they care about community. 3. Style of life. Each person develops a unique way of dealing with life, shaped by early memories and family dynamics. Adler called this our style of life, a kind of life strategy that guides behavior. Some styles are constructive, Others are rooted in avoidance and fear. In short, Adler saw people not as prisoners of the past, but as creators of their own future. And in doing so, he made personality theory a little more human and a little more hopeful. Now let's turn to someone who took Freud's ideas in a more mystical direction. Carl Jung. Jung agreed with Freud that the unconscious is powerful, but he believed Freud only scratched the surface. Jung introduced the idea of the collective unconscious, a shared psychological inheritance we all carry. According to Jung, we're not just shaped by personal experiences, but by universal patterns called archetypes which we inherit. Archetypes are not memories or images themselves, but blueprints, universal, instinctive patterns of thought and behavior. These include the mother, the hero, the shadow, the wise old man, figures that appear in myths, dreams, religions, and stories across cultures. Jung also proposed two key personality attitudes: introversion and extroversion, terms we still use today, and he described four basic psychological functions: thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. Combined with the attitudes, these form the basis of his famous personality types, later popularized by the Myers-Briggs type indicator. While Freud looked backward to childhood and sexual conflict, Jung looked inward and outward. He was fascinated by dreams, symbols, religion, and the quest for meaning. For Jung, the goal of life was not just to repress or control the unconscious, but to integrate it. He called this process individuation, the journey of becoming your true, whole self. As the psychodynamic tradition evolved, a new wave of thinkers began to shift the focus away from Freud's instinct-driven model. They brought in the powerful forces of culture, relationships, and social identity, offering a more human-centered and socially grounded view of personality. Karen Horney was one of the first to break decisively from Freud's biological emphasis. She believed that personality isn't shaped by repressed sexual drives, but by culture and social relationships, especially the dynamics of early family life. Central to her theory was the idea of basic anxiety, a deep sense of helplessness and insecurity that arises when a child feels unsafe, unloved, or neglected. To cope with this anxiety, people develop strategies. Some seek approval by moving toward others, some try to gain control by moving against others, and some withdraw emotionally by moving away. While these strategies may help in the short term, Horney warned that if they become rigid and compulsive, they turn into what she called neurotic needs. Horney also rejected Freud's notion of penis envy, insisting that what many women experience isn't a biological deficiency, but a cultural one, living in a world that devalues the feminine. In this way, she became one of the earliest feminist voices in psychoanalysis. Erich Fromm continued this social shift, blending psychology with philosophy and sociology. He believed that what makes us uniquely human, our awareness of ourselves as separate, autonomous beings, also creates deep anxiety. Freedom, Fromm argued, is both a gift and a burden. Faced with the terror of isolation and choice, many people escape into conformity, authoritarianism, or consumerism. Instead of living authentically, they adapt to the world in ways that feel safe, but erode their individuality. He described several unhealthy ways of relating to the world through dependency, control, hoarding, or self-commodification. But the healthiest orientation, in Fromm's view, is the productive one, living with love, creativity, and a sense of purpose without surrendering one's autonomy. Then came Erikson, who extended Freud's developmental theory far beyond childhood. While Freud saw personality as mostly formed by age 5, Erikson believed that development continues throughout life. He proposed a model of 8 psychosocial stages, each centered on a core conflict. In infancy, we struggle with trust versus mistrust. In adolescence, we face the question of identity versus role confusion. In old age, we confront integrity versus despair. The way we resolve each of these challenges shapes not only our personality, but our sense of meaning and coherence. Unlike Freud, Erikson placed greater emphasis on culture, history, and the social environment, on how the world we grow up in interacts with the self we become. As the psychodynamic thinkers turned outward, towards society and identity, another group of psychologists began to look upward. They asked, what does it mean to thrive, to grow, to become fully human? This was the beginning of the humanistic movement in personality psychology. Abraham Maslow is best known for his idea of a hierarchy of needs. At the base are physiological needs: food, water, safety. Once these are met, we move up toward love, esteem, and finally, self-actualization, the fulfillment of our highest potential. Maslow believed that self-actualizing people, like artists, scientists, or moral leaders, are not perfect, but they are authentic, creative, and deeply connected to truth and purpose. Importantly, Maslow saw this growth as a natural unfolding, not something forced, but something that emerges when basic needs are supported by a healthy environment. Later in life, he expanded this model to include what he called self-transcendence, a stage beyond the self, where individuals find meaning in something larger than themselves. Carl Rogers took this idea of growth even further. His person-centered theory rests on a powerful insight: that people have an innate drive to become who they truly are. This tendency, what Rogers called the actualizing tendency, is built into every person, like a seed striving to become a tree. But this growth can only happen under the right conditions. In therapy and in life, people flourish when they are met with empathy, genuineness, and above all, unconditional positive regard. A deep acceptance that says, you are worthy, just as you are. When people receive conditional love, approval that's tied to certain behaviors, they develop a split between their real self and their ideal self. Healing, for Rogers, means closing that gap and becoming more authentic. Rollo May brought an existential dimension to these humanistic ideas. Deeply influenced by European existential philosophy, May focused on the tension between freedom and anxiety. To be human, he argued, is to face the responsibility of choice, of creating meaning in a world that offers no guarantees. Anxiety isn't just a symptom, it's a fundamental part of being alive. But when we face it honestly, it can become a source of strength. May didn't offer a single blueprint for personality. Instead, he explored themes like love, courage, destiny, and authenticity. His work reminds us that psychology is not just about behavior or traits. It's also about our confrontation with mortality, with freedom, and with the search for purpose in an uncertain world. While previous psychologists searched the unconscious and explored self-actualization, another group of psychologists took a more systematic approach. They asked a different kind of question. What are the consistent patterns that define who we are? This approach is known as dispositional theory, the study of traits, temperaments, and biologically rooted tendencies that shape human personality. One of the pioneers of this movement was Gordon Allport, who insisted that personality should be studied in terms of what makes each person unique, not just what we all have in common. He distinguished between common traits, which are shared across cultures, and personal dispositions, which are unique to the individual. Allport believed that some dispositions are more dominant than others. A person might have a cardinal trait that defines their entire personality, like Gandhi's non-violence or Mother Teresa's compassion. Others might have central traits that show up consistently in everyday behavior, and secondary traits that appear only in specific situations. Allport emphasized the importance of the conscious self and personal values. He wasn't interested in diagnosing pathology. He wanted to understand what makes people good, unique, and motivated by purpose. While Allport focused on individuality, Hans Eysenck took a more empirical biological approach. He believed that traits are not just social labels, they're rooted in the brain and the nervous system. Eysenck proposed 3 fundamental dimensions of personality: extroversion, introversion, neuroticism, emotional stability, and psychoticism. He argued that differences in arousal and reactivity in the central nervous system could explain why some people are sociable and others are withdrawn, why some are anxious and others calm. Eysenck's work brought trait theory closer to neuroscience and laid the groundwork for more data-driven models. That groundwork culminated in what is now the most widely accepted model in personality psychology, the 5-factor model, or Big Five, developed by Robert McCrae and Paul Costa. Their research didn't start as a theory. It began as a taxonomy, a way to classify traits. But over time, it evolved into a full-fledged theoretical framework. The Big Five identifies 5 broad dimensions that appear consistently across cultures and languages: openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism, often remembered by the acronym OCEAN. Each of these traits exists on a spectrum, and together they form a kind of personality fingerprint. Someone high in conscientiousness might be organized and disciplined. Someone high in neuroticism might be emotionally reactive and prone to anxiety. These traits have been shown to predict everything from career success to relationship quality to physical health. What makes the Big Five so powerful is its ability to generate research, organize data, and hold up across cultures. It meets nearly all the criteria of a useful theory that Feist outlines, especially testability, simplicity, and explanatory power. It's not without limitations, but it has brought personality psychology firmly into the realm of measurable science. But personality isn't just shaped by inner drives or stable traits. It's also forged in action, through habits, consequences, and the environments we move through every day. Some theorists began asking, what if we focus less on what people are and more on what they do? This shift gave rise to the learning theories of personality, a movement grounded in observation, reinforcement, and eventually the power of thought itself. B.F. Skinner, one of the most influential figures in psychology, believed that personality is nothing more than a pattern of behavior shaped by reinforcement and punishment. To Skinner, the mind was a black box. What mattered was what went in, stimuli, and what came out, behavior. He argued that all behavior is learned through operant conditioning. We do things that are rewarded and avoid things that are punished. There's no inner self, no unconscious conflict, just a history of reinforcements that shapes how we act. According to Skinner, even complex traits like honesty or aggression are just behavior patterns that have been reinforced in certain contexts. Skinner's theory has been criticized for ignoring thoughts, feelings, and internal motivation, but it had a major impact on therapy, education, and even the criminal justice system. And it laid the foundation for more nuanced models. Enter Albert Bandura, who took learning theory in a new direction. Bandura agreed that behavior is shaped by environment, but he argued that we also learn by watching others. His social cognitive theory introduced the idea of observational learning, the process of modeling behaviors we see in others. This allows us to learn without direct experience, just by watching role models, parents, peers, or even media. But Bandura didn't stop there. He emphasized the role of cognition, especially self-efficacy, or our belief in our ability to succeed. According to Bandura, how we think about our abilities deeply shapes how we behave. People with high self-efficacy take on challenges, bounce back from failure, and grow. Those with low self-efficacy avoid risks and give up easily. In this way, personality is seen as a dynamic interaction between behavior, cognition, and environment, a concept Bandura called reciprocal determinism. Building on this, Julian Rotter introduced locus of control, the degree to which people believe they have control over what happens to them. Those with an internal locus believe outcomes depend on their own actions. Those with an external locus believe outcomes are due to luck, fate, or other people. This simple concept has had a major impact on education, health psychology, and motivation studies. Walter Miskell, a student of Rotter's, brought even more nuance to the conversation. He challenged the whole idea of stable traits by showing that behavior often varies depending on the situation. This became known as the person-situation debate. Miskell believed that what looks like personality may actually be patterns of behavior triggered by specific situations, what he called if-then patterns. For example, someone might be outgoing with friends but shy at work. Instead of searching for fixed traits, Miskell focused on the cognitive affective units, thoughts, feelings, and expectations that influence how we respond to different contexts. Finally, we come to George Kelly, whose personal construct theory stands apart from the rest. Kelly viewed people not as passive learners, but as active scientists, constantly forming, testing, and revising personal theories about the world. These mental frameworks, or constructs, help us predict events and make sense of our experiences. When our constructs are accurate, we feel confident. When they fail, we revise them. Kelly believed personality is shaped by this ongoing process of meaning-making, and that psychological problems arise when people hold rigid or invalid constructs that no longer help them navigate life effectively. While the book Theories of Personality explores the foundational ideas, modern research continues to push the field forward. Today, scientists are using brain scans to link traits to specific brain regions, and genetic studies show that personality is shaped by both DNA and experience. We also know that personality can change over time, especially after major life events. New models like Hexaco add traits like honesty and humility to the Big Five, while others examine the darker sides of personality. Traits like narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, known as the dark triad. In short, personality psychology is still evolving, combining the insights of the past with the tools of the present. Personality theory isn't about finding one final answer. It's about exploring the many ways people have tried to make sense of who we are. Through conflict and growth, instinct and choice, biology and culture. Each theory, with its own questions and assumptions, invites us to see ourselves and others through a new lens. If you found value in this video, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And join us on our journey of discovering ourselves, the world around us, and the greatest minds and ideas. Thank you very much for watching.